And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? And so brave to sit in the front row your first time here. What brings you all here, those of you here for the first time?
I have to do a cultural plunge for my business class.
You have to do a cultural plunge for your business class.
But sorry, I chose Buddhist.
So you're forced to be here, but you chose to be here. That's good.
Well, I chose this topic, yes.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. And you just got dragged along with?
For support.
For support?
And I wanted to see what this is all about.
Nice. Well, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
I was invited.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in Buddhism. What I'm very impressed with it already. I'm interested to know more.
Yeah, very cool. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Anyone else first time want to share why they're here?
I used to come for the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Nice. Where you been all these years?
Oh,
I do know. Glad you're back.
yes, thank you.
Yeah. We still make them every Thursday. It's 4:30 now.
Oh, cool.
We moved it up a half hour, but peanut butter, jelly, bread, and feed people who sleep on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Still the same deal. Yeah. Well, good to see you again. Welcome back. Yeah, I always talk about, I say it at the end, I'll probably say it again anyways, but I always say that's the greatest practice. You know, anytime you really lack gratitude and you think you're having a bad day and you think your life sucks and everything's falling apart, go feed people who sleep on a sidewalk.
Right.
And it tends to really put things into perspective. So it's a good reminder, and I say that just so casually 2 to 3 times a week, you know, at the end of my class with the spiel always, but I mean it very seriously. Like, when you do that and you recognize that there's people, like probably 12,000 people right now, 3 miles from here sleeping on a sidewalk, it'll rattle you. And if it doesn't, then you just keep doing it until it does. Because, you know, I've never been a big fan of kind of comparing difficult situations or challenges or conflicts. And I don't mean to minimize or, you know, kind of lack validation for any conflicts or troubles or chaos we might have in our lives, because we do, we have it. And it's not fair to say one's struggles or challenges are greater or less than another's. But my guess is most of us here, if not all of us in this room, are going to go home when this is done to a roof and a bed and options of what to eat and options of what to wear. We have all that, most likely. You know, there's always a possibility somebody in here that doesn't. But my guess is we all have that. And that doesn't take away from the challenges we face. But I've always found it really beneficial, and that is the heart of Buddhist practice. The first thing the Buddha taught to overcome suffering is, it's called dana, it means generosity, and it's to give. It's to give your time, your attention, your heart, a smile, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you know? Just something that comes with really just pure intention. And even if often people ask like, well, is it wrong to feel good when I'm doing this? Or is it wrong to know that I'm doing this just because it helps me feel good? No, it's not wrong. But ultimately you're working on doing these things because it's just a good thing to do. And often helps us. Anyone in here lack gratitude for everything you have in your life? 3 of you, 4 of you, all right. A bunch of liars out here. But yeah, when we lack gratitude, which is probably just about every day at some point throughout the day for most people. Most people in this room, I'm guessing, at some point throughout your day, lack gratitude. And putting yourself in a situation to remind you about gratitude is really important. So, yeah. All right, so with that, we're going to start with a meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free to say hello as you are on the chat box on your screen. So for those who are maybe sitting in meditation or here for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. You don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. It's just a cat. It'll probably be all right. I saw your reaction. I've sat with you long enough to know that you're like in freaking out panic mode right now. The cat's always there, always in the window, and maybe just sees a bird. So we will do our best to make sure that our meditation does not disturb the cat. It's probably what the cat is talking about. It's really upset that we're about to do this right now, and we're really bothering the cat. So should we stop? So you'll hear sounds. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third. If you're on a bench or chair, wherever you're seated, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders, hands are on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest, Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit, you hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external situation. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It helps you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then actually make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time. When we set all that down and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it is a practice. It's not a 6-week course. It's not something that all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got it. Your entire life is going to be filled with chaos. The sooner you embrace that, the easier this practice is. Meditation, Buddhist practice doesn't mean that all of a sudden your life is going to start going perfectly. It won't. It will always have conflict. But the question is, how do you respond to it? How do you face it? How do you deal with it? Because when we have challenges and difficulties in our lives, obviously there's a million options of how we respond, but 2 simple ones are we make choices and decisions that make things worse, or we make choices and decisions that make things better when we're in a situation dealing with conflict. And if we make wise decisions, ideally ones that don't make things worse, then we don't make things worse. But when we're really wrapped up in emotions and anger and sadness and depression and fear and worry, and when our head is there and our heart is there, then we make decisions coming from those places. And very often that makes things just more difficult to deal with. And now we have to deal with more of a mess that we just created. So I speak about this not because I read it in some sutra. I speak about this because it's what I did most of my life, which was make decisions and choices that just kept making things worse. Buddhism didn't change the decisions I made. Meditation didn't change the decisions I made. I had to change the decisions I made. And when I did that, life got simpler. And then it just kind of ripple effect from there. But it requires one thing that I know all of you are so good at, which is patience. Especially towards yourself. Give yourself some time. It takes a while. If you've been angry and pissed off for 15, 20 years, it's going to take a little longer than 3 weeks to get through that. You know? So give yourself some time. But just keep practicing. Keep showing up. I don't necessarily mean here, I mean for yourself. You know, keep showing up for yourself, giving yourself time and space to sit and breathe, and allow life to settle before we keep doing things that make it worse. So, with that, I'll pause. For me, always, I really just prefer responding to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, to those joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free as you are to say hello. If you have questions, you can put them on the chat box. So open up. We'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with.
A couple of weeks ago, I think you mentioned the Diamond Sutra. Can you explain what that is?
No. There is no Diamond Sutra to explain. In fact, the Diamond Sutra, which has many titles often that come along with it, the master that I studied with, his title for the Diamond Sutra, the book, it would call commentary, so it has a sutra in it and commentaries on it, we call sastras. His title that went along with the Diamond Sutra was Describing the Indescribable, or Undescribable, which at this point doesn't even matter which one is grammatically correct or not. You get it from both of those, right? I don't remember which it was, but indescribable, undescribable, if one of those is not a word, I don't know. But again, it doesn't even matter. But the Diamond Sutra, it comes from, in Buddhism, the Mahayana Buddhist Sutras, which are about 2,000 years old. And they're often referred to as the Prajnaparamita, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. The Heart Sutra is a condensed form of the Diamond Sutra. The Diamond Sutra initially was like, I don't know, 70,000 lines or something like that. But literally just read it. You can go to Google Diamond Sutra, and boom, you'll get a bunch of them that pop up. Stick on the first 2 pages of your Google search and read it. And it'll make no sense to you whatsoever. It is really getting that duality. That's kind of, if I had to sum it up, understanding that our mind that sees dualities is the mind that leads to suffering. And the sutra is, I believe, there to help you cut through duality. The calligraphy right there, kind of just to your right there, the black, the second one, not the Tanka, yeah, the black and white one there, the little Chinese calligraphy. That's a calligraphy there from the Heart Sutra. Form is precisely emptiness. Emptiness is precisely form. Reading the Chinese will probably make as much sense to you as reading the Diamond Sutra. But for me, I think the beauty of those sutras is, I think one thing it did for me is it helped me, and it's going back years ago, stop trying to figure everything out. And actually, many cases, stop trying to figure anything out. I get it, some things logically, practically, We have a water leak. We want to figure out where it's coming from so it doesn't keep leaking. You don't just say, well, I read the Diamond Sutra, so I don't need to figure out where the water leak comes from. That wouldn't be wise. But I could list you 1,000 other things that I would have spent so many years on trying to figure out, that once I stopped trying to figure them out, suffering drastically decreased. Very often the thing we're trying to figure out isn't even causing suffering. The suffering is literally being caused by the craving and desire to try to figure something out. So when you stop trying to figure things out, man, so much liberation comes from that. And when you understand the Diamond Sutra, then you understand there's nothing to understand. Understand? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Always happy to help. Yeah.
What is the Prajna Paramita mantra used for?
When you say mantra, what do you mean? So the Prajna Paramita is a kind of a general term. Prajna means wisdom, Paramita is perfection. So Prajna Paramita is the kind of overarching title of a body of sutras within Buddhism, right? So it's not necessarily a mantra. I just picked one piece of the Heart Sutra that's what that is. Form is precisely emptiness, emptiness is precisely form. So it's not really a mantra per se. Is that what you're asking? Like when you say what is it used for?
It's one that's, the one I'm thinking of, I probably don't know the name of. It's the Gate
Gate Paragate. That's what I was wondering if you were thinking that. Yeah, sorry. Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisattva Path. It literally translates to gone, gone, gone beyond, thus hail, just gone. Yeah.
So when is that applied?
When or what?
For what? Yeah.
Oh, I can't answer either of those questions. I was just curious to know which one you asked. Yeah. I mean, again, so yeah, the end of the Heart Sutra, the very end is Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisattva. And it, gone, gone, gone beyond, all hail, thus just gone, or something like that. So both of these, Heart Sutra, Diamond Sutra, the essence of them is the emptiness practice. In Buddhism we call emptiness, right? Shunyata. And emptiness it's an impossible one to talk about, just like it's impossible to talk about the Diamond Sutra, right? Talking about the thing that cannot be talked about. Emptiness is the same thing. But the way that emptiness for me is practiced in life, when I look at the Heart Sutra, is the entire world, everything in its existence. Your mind, your thoughts, physical form, people on the streets, traffic, people making your coffee at Starbucks or wherever you go. All of that is completely different from how you perceive it to be. Nothing in this world is how you perceive it to be. And when you can understand that and embrace that, you begin to open up the mind and heart that says, gee, maybe I'm not right. Ever been in an argument with someone? When you're in that argument, you think you're right? Usually. I don't know about you, even when I knew I was wrong, I still argued just because I like to argue, and I just wanted to see if I could win the argument, even though I knew I was wrong, but at least I felt better for winning the argument, If we can drop this idea of thinking that we know what's right, so much conflict goes away. Everything we see is nothing but our perception. And we get fixed on that. And we convince ourselves we are correct. And for every view we have, there's somebody else who has a different view. And you know what they think? They think they're correct. So emptiness, to me, in practice, doesn't mean that you're going to live your life and have no views. It doesn't mean that you're going to all of a sudden drop these views that you have. But to me, in practice, it means, can I even open up my mind a little bit to recognize that maybe I should listen to other people's views? Maybe I should listen to their perspectives. Even if I disagree, even if I don't like it, even if I think it's harmful, I should hear it. I should listen to it. I should try to understand it. these are the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, Martin Luther King. These are the beauty of fighting for what you believe in, but with love and compassion in your heart, not hate, which is usually what we fight with. So, when I think about kind of gone beyond, to me it's really addressing this idea of going beyond the sense of self, the I, the ego, the pride, and just abiding in sensation of breath and being actually present to be with what's occurring, which is where we're pretty much never spending time. We're spending time with what's in our mind, not with what's actually happening.
Projecting.
Yeah, projecting, for sure. So, what else? Griffin, yes sir.
When or if you have ever felt empty, what have you done?
Say that again,
When or if you ever have felt empty, what have you done?
Well, when you say empty, are you referring to empty the way I was just talking about empty? Or are you referring to empty like sad and lonely and depressed?
Like sad.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think, as a young kid and then into my teens and 20s, when I felt empty and I felt sad, I tended to just like isolate even more, right? Like the way I dealt with what you're asking about when I was 15, 20 years old is definitely not how I would recommend or suggest anybody do it. So I just don't want to present as if I knew what to do when I was 20 years old, when I felt that way. When I felt that way, I did a bunch of shit that made it worse. So what I did as I got older and began to bring this Buddhist practice into my life, when I felt empty, when I felt sad, when I felt depressed, I just went and helped people. Because what it did was it took the pain I was feeling and the thoughts I was having away from me. And we all know, you've helped people in your life, right? When you help somebody, how do you feel? Feel good. So my master, she always said, go help people. This was 2003. I was miserable, depressed, and she said, Jeff, go start doing meditation in prisons. I've been at the temple all of like 3 weeks, so she felt I was fully qualified to take Buddhist practice into prison. It's actually a true story. The guy who was going back to Germany who'd been doing it, he was going away for 2 months, and he said, I need somebody to fill in for me while I'm gone. And Venerable Yijur, the nun, she said, Jeff will do it. And that was it, and I was miserable, and all of a sudden, 3 weeks into the temple, I'm going into prisons, and man, did I feel good when I left. And that taught me early on, if I wanted to feel better, stop thinking about myself. Now, it didn't mean that what I was sad or depressed about was fixed or changed, right? But I wasn't focused on it for those 2 hours, and all of a sudden I felt good. And then if I started to sink back into thinking about it, I just found something else to go do to help people. So when you repeat that process day after day, week after week, year after year, then it just becomes how you are. And then that feeling of empty, sad, depression, it's just not there anymore. Because you're not giving rise to all the crap that's in your head and your heart. You see it there. But I think the other piece that's important that I learned, with this practice is the Buddhist teachings around impermanence. That even if that kind of thought of sadness or anger, depression would arise, then you recognize, okay, this is a thought, this is a feeling, it's not going to be that way forever. Right? It'll change. And just that idea of knowing that that feeling, that emotion, that thought will change, often is enough to get you through it. Sometimes you just need an hour or 30 minutes. Sometimes if you feel miserable and sad, and this is what I share a lot now, it's like, sit with that. We're in kind of this culture, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, we're in kind of this culture where like, everybody's just in a rush to help themselves, self-help. Right? No offense to all of you who go to therapy and are in self-help class 101, I get it. Help ourselves. But the Buddhist teachings is not self-help. The Buddhist teachings is there is no self, and go help others. So while we're so wrapped up in trying to help ourselves, maybe if we stopped helping ourselves so much and helped others, we wouldn't give rise to the self that needs help. We'd be lost in others, and then we'd feel better. And therapy's expensive. Go to it if you're in it. Don't stop. I'm just saying, this idea of this constant people wanting to fix them. I'm not even necessarily talking about you right now specifically. I never so much talk about anyone specifically, but this idea that we constantly have to feel good all the time. The Buddha said the first thing, life is filled with dukkha, suffering. Now he said the second thing is the cause, greed, anger, and ignorance. So we practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom to get out of it. The third is there's an ending to our suffering, and that's good news. And the fourth is the path. Eightfold path. Views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. That's how we live our lives. That's what we do all day. But when we are in that kind of first noble truth of life is suffering, you don't need to go to a day spa immediately. You don't need a day. Like we're in this culture, like, oh, I need a day. Like, just sit with your misery. It's okay. I didn't know that when I was 15, 20, 25 years old. So if I was miserable, I went and I drank, or I got high, or I punched somebody, or whatever it was. Because then that made my ego feel better. But it didn't actually help anything. It just fed my pride and ego, which was actually the thing that was causing me to suffer to begin with. So if I would have learned to just sit with my anger, which for me early on in Buddhist practice, just because you start Buddhist practice and meditation immediately doesn't mean your anger is going to go away. You're going to watch it. And you're going to see it. You're like, oh, there's anger. Okay, cool. So this is me over here. Here's these thoughts and feelings of anger, but I'm actually watching them as if it's like a show. You ever watch a movie for 2 hours? And for those 2 hours, do you do anything? You just sit there and watch the movie. Watching your emotions is kind of like that. You're just watching them. You're like, man, this is a shitty movie. But you're eating popcorn, you're eating ice cream, and you're like, all right, I'll just watch this movie of anger for 2 hours. And you know what you don't do during those 2 hours? Anything that makes it worse. So you just watch it. So, it doesn't mean it feels good. It sucks. It's painful. It's sad. The heart breaks, the emotions flow, and they're tough to deal with at any age, especially 15. But just know they'll change. And find yourself helping people and putting yourself in situations that you enjoy. Yeah. What else? So there's a question here. How did you first become interested in Buddhism? I was a 20-year-old college kid at University of Arizona, and my brother said I should take Chinese Civilization 174 because it was an easy A. Junior year at college, and I'm all for easy A's. So I took Chinese Civ 174. For the record, it was an easy A, and we had to read Intro to Zen by D.T. Suzuki. So there I am. This was 28 years ago. I opened up the Zen book, and I was like, wow, that just kind of blew my mind. College life, I definitely wasn't interested in some Buddhist meditation path, but at that time in my life, but the book resonated with me deeply. So it kind of planted the seed again. And then for probably about 7-8 years, it was just something I'd pick up books here and there and look at. And, I thought Buddhism was cool and neat, but it never really became a part of my life. And then 2003, I was in line one night at some club downtown and had this whole realization. I'd been to this temple 6 months earlier, not this temple, but Shifang Temple down the street 6 months earlier. My best friend Kristen, she said, hey, do you want to go to a Buddhist service? She had to go observe Buddhism somewhere for a class.
Oh, really?
I was the friend, so you two should be careful right now. 20 years later, I ended up sitting here, so I'm warning the two of you. But yeah, she was a graduate student at San Diego State. She had to go observe a religious experience outside of her religion. So she said, Jeff, you always say you're Buddhist. Why don't you come with me? So I went, and I remember sitting down kind of in that seat, like right there, looking up at this big Buddhist statue. And again, this is 2003. The whole world just fell off my shoulders. I felt like everything was just perfect. I talked to the nun afterwards, and I said, I'll be back tomorrow. 6 months go by, I never went back. And I was in line one night at this club downtown, as I started to say, and it was my buddy's birthday. They just got out of the military, and we were all excited. At that time, I was making a lot of money and having a lot of fun and buying houses and cars and all this stuff. So I had a lot of money and no patience. And so I'm in line and had this whole realization in my head in about 30 seconds that I was going to get out of the line, go to the VIP line, pay the dude a bunch of money to get in. I was going to buy us all drinks all night long, chase some girl around, wake up the next day and feel like crap. Had that whole thought in my head in like 30 seconds. Not some outer body experience, just the realization that that's what's going to happen. Sure enough, that's what happened. I woke up the next day at noon by myself. My first thought was I got a headache. And my second thought was I got to go back to that temple. I wasn't an addict, so it wasn't like I hit rock bottom per se. But for me, it was just this kind of, this is not how I want to live the rest of my life. I woke up, I went back to the temple. I got there probably about noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And I picked up two books. One was Graceful Exits, a story about how great spiritual beings, what happens to them at time of death. We have this expression in our culture, rest in peace. Well, it's probably in many cultures, but rest in peace. Well, if you're going to rest in peace, what does that mean you got to do? You got to live in peace. How y'all doing with that right now? You're going to have a rough time resting peacefully if you can't live peacefully. So I learned that very quickly from this book. And the second one was Lotus in the Stream. It's, to me, still one of the best intro to Buddhism books out there. All the basic teachings, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, 6 Paramitas, karma, rebirth, all this stuff summed up in like 12 pages each, 15 pages. So I read these 2 books, and in many ways, as I said, I haven't left the temple since. That was, that was 2003, so 21 years ago. And I've been doing this practice every day since. And spent a year in a monastery in Taiwan, 2005, 2006, and then came back and we opened up Dharma Bums to introduce it to local folks who are brand new to Buddhism, that didn't grow up with Buddhism. That's you all, for the most part. So that's how I got interested in Buddhism. And going back to the question earlier, eventually it wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about my suffering, my pain, my sadness, my depression. It was about doing what you can to create space for others to find a sense of peace and happiness. And that's what fills my life. And to me is really the only thing that matters. So, yeah.
What was the name of that book, the second one?
Lotus in the Stream. It's out of print. They actually did a newer translation of it, which is equally as good. But if you Amazon, you can usually find used ones of Lotus in the Stream. I liked that one just because it was translated by, his name was Tom Graham. I knew him. He was, 50-year-old dude at the time from Middle America. He grew up in this culture, but he also was fluent in Chinese and spent a lot of time around the master. So he was able to take these teachings, and the translation I felt was really clear. The newer one is also just as good. So if you don't, I forget the name of the newer one, but you'll stumble across it if you don't see Lotus in the Stream. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the first one was called?
Graceful Exits. It's like, Graceful Exits. Then it's like how spiritual beings die or something like that. But Graceful Exits. Yeah. And that one wasn't so much a Buddhist book. It was just about, from what I recall, different spiritual masters or teachers about death. Yeah. Because everyone's so afraid of death, but we're all going to get there. I mean, the Buddha said, you got birth, you got aging, you got sickness, and you got death. You cannot escape those things. So, since we know we're going to die, it could be tonight, it could be 100 years from now. We don't know, but it's coming. So since you know it's coming, why waste time being miserable? There's so much beauty to enjoy in this world. So many precious, incredible things to find joy and happiness in. And yet you'll spend 6 hours a day in your own head, miserable and depressed, at something that happened, 18 years ago. Or whatever it is. So. What else? Questions?
I have one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is the inner being like for you that you experience? I feel like the inner being that is not disturbed by the outside environment. I don't know if it makes facial expressions, like it even has a face. I wanted a hug from my inner being, but I felt like the inner being just doesn't interact with the self. Have you experienced it?
I don't know. I'm not, if I have an inner being, I don't know. I don't even have an outer being. I don't know. Yeah, I'm I'm just an asshole who tries to be nice. I'm not, I hear you, I don't even, but that's, yeah.
Can we make that into a t-shirt?
I don't know. I think they have that as a t-shirt. But I would say for you, I mean, if that, like the part that you said, which I think is important to explore, you're like, I don't even know what that is or who that is, like how to give it a hug or something, but maybe, just continue to sit silently, become aware of like, what is that inner being to you? Who is that inner child, that inner being, but I'm the wrong guy for stuff like that. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi. So it was a while ago, but I brought up that quote, which I didn't know what that said.
Oh, yeah.
It was the Buddhist quote, the Dharma of my practice is non-practice.
Yes.
Man, I've been chewing on that for a long time. And then you respond with, you want to get really tripped out, there's no self, there's no enlightenment, there's no meditation, there's no, so then I kind of fell down a rabbit hole with Alan Watts. Tripped me out some more. So now I'm wondering, like, if you go down the rabbit hole deep enough, then really there's no reality whatsoever. I mean, we're using words, but these words are just noises that we've attached a model or meaning of, but that meaning is imaginary, perhaps. And so we're treating our thinking and our thoughts as if it's real, but it's all gobbledygook.
Yes, but, okay. So I literally lived what you just described. And now it's time for you to come back to reality. Because that way, and yeah, Alan Watts, I mean, if you've got, like I said, and that is my personal practice with the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form is precisely emptiness, emptiness is precisely form. The Heart Sutra, there's no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, no path, all those types of things that I would have rambled to before, which yes, will either lead you to Alan Watts or Alan Watts will lead you to that, either way. Alan Watts, incredible Zen teacher, but also just your mind will blow up from reading it. But it's intended to do that. But here's the thing that I would caution you on, right, which is why you're asking this question, or I don't know why you're asking the question, but to me,
I don't know why
to me, is when you said there is no reality. So in Buddhism, there's what we talk about is conventional reality and ultimate reality. Ultimate reality is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What you're attempting to put into words, the gobbledygook, whatever you called it. Conventional reality. Conventional reality is what we live in, right? So there's to go down that rabbit hole, but then to realize, once you realize there's no rabbit, there's no hole, there's no rabbit hole, there's no way to go down the rabbit hole, then you got to come back. And one of my favorite expressions, also Zen teaching, is before, it might have even been Watts, I don't know who said it, doesn't matter, it might have been Watts, but before studying Zen, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers. While studying Zen, mountains are no longer mountains and rivers are no longer rivers. After studying Zen, mountains are again mountains and rivers are again rivers. And what this means in very practical sense to me is that to say, well, there's no reality and it's all just an illusion and blah, 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 if you chop your leg off, it's going to hurt. That's not an illusion. Right? If you're on a cliff and you jump and you can't fly. So conventional reality says, I need to be very aware that there's traffic out there. And if I just think I'm lost in, and I'm not, this isn't an act, this is for everybody. If I just think I'm lost in Alan Watts' world, then I can just close my eyes and float across the traffic. No, you're going to get hit and die. So we have to bring it back.
Yeah, or maybe like, yeah, it's a mountain, but just because I have a concept of a mountain, I can see it's a mountain. I shouldn't think I know everything about a mountain just because I have a word for it.
Correct, again, but wisdom, to me, says understand the relationship the mountain has in this reality that we live in. Because you, in the Alan Watts world, might say, that's not a mountain, that's just a word you're putting on a bunch of dirt. But a million people think it's a mountain.
Yeah, I'm going to preface, I'm not in Alan Watts' world.
No, I know.
Yeah, I just kind of, He really, I mean, yeah, it was interesting listening.
I'm not attacking you.
Yeah.
So here's the funny thing. And now I'm attacking you. I wasn't before. You just shared everything you said, which is beautiful and right there. But now I'm throwing what I'm saying at you, and you're getting defensive.
Well, and
See how you're doing it again now? Right?
I'm trying to understand.
What I'm saying is that the ultimate reality you're at is beautiful. And I'm just referencing Watts, but that ultimate reality is beautiful to be there. But if we can't figure out how to bring it back to conventional reality, we're going to really get confused and struggle. Because, for example, I've a friend years ago, and he was totally into Buddhism and blah, 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 and he was big into the Diamond Sutra and Heart Sutra stuff. And every time he got in an argument with his girlfriend, he was like, I don't argue. I read the Diamond Sutra. I don't argue. I'm beyond all of that. How well do you think that goes over? Because that's kind of what I'm talking about, is that it's great to be there and to see that ultimate reality, everything's an illusion. It's all an illusion, and we all put labels and meanings on things, and they are not those things. Those are just the meanings and labels. But we have to come back to recognizing how the world uses those meanings and labels, or we'll just be really frustrated, confused, or almost even annoyed and irritated at everybody who thinks it's a mountain. It's like, you idiot, that's not a mountain. No, it is a mountain. So that's that. I didn't mean you idiot, but I mean that might be. Yeah. So it's fun.
It's wild, though.
It's totally wild. That's great. Keep going. Yeah. Anything else before we close? Jamie had a question, but she took off, so we're good. Anything else before we close on that? Like last 1 minute thing?
I do.
Yeah.
So, what is the Buddhist thought on having empathy and the thin line that separates that from getting sucked into someone else's?
Same question. For 2 years, you've been asking in different words.
I know. I keep getting sucked in, and I'm like, why am I?
There is no self to get sucked in. It's your attachment to expecting them to be a certain way. Give no matter what. They may appreciate it, they might not, and you can choose to deal with it or not. Give regardless. Their appreciation of it, their acceptance of it, that's on them. When you give without any expectation of getting anything in return, you are no longer sucked into anything. You're just giving because you love to give. And they may throw it back in your face. So when people ask questions, especially those I've sat with for the last couple of years, it's even easier to see where, when we say there's that fine line between empathy and you're trying to protect yourself. And I get that. And I'm not suggesting on a conventional world that protecting yourself is bad or wrong. But at least be aware that you're trying to protect yourself as if there's someone concrete there that you need to protect. Just give. If you want to stop giving, stop giving. But don't worry about the fine line. Give or don't give. That is the question. So, yeah. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace and free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Kevin Harvey for his time of healing. May he be free from all suffering. All right, so before you all head out, we have our Dharma Bum host, Anna, who will have a few announcements for us all. And there's a question as Anna's coming up. There's a question that says, who is Buddha, God, Master? Buddha was just a human. He was a prince who lived 2,500 years ago, and he died when he was 80. So he's not a god or a master. He was just some dude.
Hello everyone, I'm tonight's host Anna. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, I almost read that, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to help me, a short person, close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here.